Chelsea search for a goal-scoring solution. The Blues are back in the race for Jude Bellingham, and we need to talk about Marc Cucurella. Hello there, guys. What is going on? Daniel Childs back here again for another edition of Let's Talk Chelsea. Hope you're doing well. Hope you're keeping safe on this Thursday. Closer to the weekend, closer to Chelsea back in action. Going to have my preview of that massive game at Stamford Bridge on 3 p.m. Saturday kickoff. It's Southampton game is massive for Chelsea. It really is, based on another defeat last night and kind of the mood around Chelsea and a lot of things we've been speaking about. So we will go into that tomorrow, hopefully ahead of what could be a confidence-boosting weekend for Graham Potter's side. But in today's news video, got quite a few to get into, transfer news mainly, but we will touch on some other stuff too. If you are new around here and like Chelsea content, hit that subscribe button, hit the notification bell so you don't miss any of the uploads. Give this video a like, it really does help out. If you're listening on the podcast feed, thank you so much for tuning in. Son of Chelsea is a part of the 90 Min podcast network. The first part sort of to get into today is some transfer news that I saw last week and a little bit this week regarding Chelsea going in for a striker this summer. Yes, the January transfer window has recently finished, but given Chelsea spending, and you'd think after spending £600 million, you were kind of done in terms of the first two transfer windows of this season, and then you'd think about next season. But already plans are being drawn up for the summer as expected, and it seems like Chelsea are going to be focusing on signing a traditional striker. This is according to Ben Jacobs of CBS, and it's true that Graham Potter does like Ivan Toney as a potential target. He said, "I am sure they'll watch closely how he's punished for alleged gambling charges," which of course is a big thing looming over his head at the moment, before discussing further. But he does end with saying it's one to watch. I know there have been other names floated around like Victor Osimhen, who of course is having an amazing season with Napoli this season in Serie A. There are other names out there too, but you think about Chelsea spending all that money, and I think there's a lot of people turning around now. I saw it a lot of the punditry after the Borussia Dortmund game where we didn't sign a striker. I still didn't see that as the biggest priority in the window, because we're in the sense that I look at other areas where we've needed to strengthen for so long, like central midfield. And I also, like I said in my Borussia Dortmund review, if you haven't seen it already, that we still have some players who are connecting, who are gelling, who are getting used to this team. I still have my doubts whether Kai Havertz will ever be kind of that striker solution, but he has been playing as that for some time, and at times in short bursts he's shown the capability to score goals. And at least Chelsea in the last few games are showing they can create opportunities, and hopefully that fortune will turn round if we are creating more opportunities of high value. But in terms of those names, I really like Ivan Toney as a player. I feel that it's one of those players again that could Chelsea, this new recruitment team who probably don't want to be spending 600 million and can't afford to spend 600 million every single season, can they find players like Toney from the Championship? Because I know a few years ago when Toney was banging in a lot of goals for Brentford before they got promoted to the Premier League, a lot of people would have shrugged their shoulders and kind of turned their nose up at a player in the Championship. But I feel that Toney, you look at the way he's quickly adapted to life in the Premier League, he's scoring goals consistently, he's a great penalty taker. But above all else, I think that, physically he really deals with the league well, but just a very smart player too. Technically, he fits in with the way Brentford want to play under Thomas Frank. I praise Brentford a lot, I think, for their highly effective game. But I do feel that there is a player there in some of the performances I've seen this season. The one away at Man City really sticks out. Two very different finishes from Ivan Toney there to win Brentford the game. But a player that could make that jump up. And could it be to Chelsea? Would that be a player you're kind of targeting? But another player Chelsea could be going in for this summer is Jude Bellingham, who of course played against Chelsea for Borussia Dortmund last night. This is from Matt Law before the game in the Telegraph. Chelsea want Jude Bellingham despite 600 million, that fee once again being brought up, that number. Matt Law reports that there is a recognition within Chelsea that they are not among the favourites to sign Bellingham, who is also a target for Liverpool, Man City, Real Madrid, and missing out on qualification for the Champions League would make their task even harder. Apparently that will not stop Chelsea doing everything in their power to make themselves part of the conversation over Bellingham in the summer, when the midfielder is expected to leave Borussia Dortmund, and the club are expected to keep open lines of communication to the teenager's advisor. Bellingham had a decent night last night against Chelsea, 84% pass accuracy, 69 touches, 7 out of 12 ground duels won, 2 key passes. One of those players who very much starred for Dortmund in their big win last night against Chelsea. I didn't think think Bellingham dominated the midfield. I have to say, I think as the game progressed, Loftus-Cheek and Enzo Fernandez were a little bit more, I think, in control, particularly in that second half when Chelsea were creating opportunities. But there's no denying Bellingham's talent. I've been speaking about Bellingham as a Chelsea target, I want to say since like 2020 maybe. It's been a while now, and even maybe before that when Frank Lampard was still here. Of course, the story that Lampard was told quite recently that I think it was Jody Morris, that apparently they showed Bellingham around the training ground before he moved to Borussia Dortmund that summer. So it could have been a very different story. The one thing I would say about Bellingham, now we've signed Enzo Fernandez, is that I don't think that when I look at the midfield now, we've got a new player in, that Bellingham is the profile we need. I think we need, and you saw it last night, I think we need a ball winner. We need someone who is going to sit a little bit deeper, who is going to be more of that traditional number 6 type player. It's not that Enzo Fernandez can't do that role. I think he's already shown that with his passing ability, he can do that from a deeper position. But just in terms of, a higher caliber of opposition when Chelsea faced them in those transition opportunities, I think that Enzo had a much tougher night. And just being able to give Enzo that license to go further up the pitch and create havoc a bit more with his passing, I feel that there are other players for me that I think Chelsea should be targeting. And I know I say his name a lot, but I think, Declan Rice falls into that category more than Jude Bellingham does. I think Jude Bellingham is a really, really good number 8. And I think that absolutely whoever he goes to, I think would improve their midfield. But if you're asking me what I think this Chelsea midfield's lacking, I don't think Bellingham is as much of a priority now we've signed Enzo Fernandez. But I'm sure many people will disagree with me because he's a quality player, Jude Bellingham, no denying that. But I think it would be unlikely he may come to Chelsea, given where Chelsea may be at the end of the season. The final thing I want to speak about today is another piece from Matt Law that was released today, actually, around the booing of Marc Cucurella. And it goes into some personal issues that Cucurella has faced this season, some not nice ones that I'm sure would have affected any player. And I definitely suggest go and read the piece. Cucurella, number one, I just think the booing of players, whoever they are, I just don't think is a good idea. And I don't, unless that player is, you see like the Granit Xhaka incident quite a few years ago. Whilst in that incident, I had sympathy for Xhaka because he'd been facing a lot of abuse online. He'd been facing sarcastic cheers inside the ground. That kind of built up over to that point. And it's incredible when you think about that Xhaka incident, where he is now as an Arsenal player. But, just look at that one where he was kind of provoking the crowd, or, you leave the club in a very hostile environment, or, those kind of things. We saw Thibaut Courtois came back to Stamford Bridge. I haven't seen sort of dislike for a player coming back to Chelsea in my time, like to that level. But I don't understand, like, there's criticism of a player, and it's something I bring up a lot when I speak about Mason Mount, but I speak about, a lot of players, and I rally against it for a lot of players, is that the visceral, like, dislike of your own players now, I just find very, very bizarre. And Cucurella, it seems to me, has become another one of these players who people seem to like just really, really dislike, and I don't understand it. It was a bit like last season when, the stories about Christensen was coming out and people just had this very toxic turn against him. And I'm not entirely sure what Christensen did other than having bad performances, which a lot of players do, in their career. I don't understand the justification for it. And booing him, I don't know how that helps what is a very difficult and challenging season. I don't know how booing a player who is clearly going to hear that, how that helps him become a better player. And I think that the comparison that Matt Law makes in his piece is one that I think I've made already, is to Jorginho when Maurizio Sarri was here. And I wrote a lot for the Chelsea Echo at the time, Simon Phillips' old site, when I wrote a lot of pieces for them. And you can still find them, I think, online somewhere. Around the time that Jorginho was getting booed, and around the time Jorginho was sarcastically cheered when he was substituted, like we've already seen with Marc Cucurella, like I saw and witnessed when he was replaced for Ben Chilwell against Fulham. It's not good. It's toxic. I don't care who it's against. I don't think it creates a good environment. It's something that I was speaking about when I did that Mason Mount video last month of... It creates a culture that I think people... I can understand why players maybe don't want to play here, because I don't know how it creates a better environment when I've seen it against the likes of, not booing, but, the toxicity we've seen against a variety of players over a number of years. You go back to Gary Cahill, Willian, Marcos Alonso, Kepa Arrizabalaga, I remember went through a really brutal period, particularly in that 1920 season. Jorginho, as I've already mentioned. You could go through so many, in this list. I think there are fewer players who've been abused, and of course, booing in the stadium is to another level. Social media toxicity, unfortunately, is something that you just see across football. When I'm seeing booing inside the ground, I don't think it's the nicest look for Chelsea fans, and I don't think it comes across very well. People pay their money and they're entitled to boo if they want, but I don't think it creates a nice atmosphere. And it's not the case that you always have to be happy, positive, and you can never criticize anyone. But I do wonder, and people think, like, what impact that has on these players and what environment does that create for a player who's clearly struggling with confidence this season. So yeah, I know a lot of people just look at these footballers like robots and 2D objects that, you can be as abusive and harmful and, say whatever you want, as despicable as it is. And we see that on social media all the time and think that there's no collateral damage to that. I think it is a lot more nuanced than that. And I hope for Cucurella's sake, he can rediscover some confidence, because he hasn't been playing well recently. But I would never go as far to start booing a player when they're down on, performances, because I don't think that's going to help him in a difficult time. But that's my opinion. So that is it for today's news video. Thank you guys so much for taking the time to watch or listen to it on the podcast. You can follow me on Twitter @SonOfChelsea, and I will see you again very soon. All the best.